science history, unraveling the mystery that all started with a Big Bang.
Mr. Misogyny's tips for breaking through the glass ceiling. Shrill bad, dusky good. No man can happily work or vote for a woman whose voice sounds like a mom or wife yelling at him. Whether running a Fortune 500 company or running for office, women should practice speaking like Kathleen Turner in Body Heat. If you have small children present, rent Who Framed Roger Rabbit and check out Jessica Rabbit. Power words. Down through the ages there have been secret words and phrases that a select group of women have known and used to give them control over men. Use them wisely and you'll be on the other side of that glass ceiling before you know it. A short list includes panties, huge, amazing, and anything you want. Just hurry. For increased effectiveness, say these power words like Kathleen Turner. Boobs. If you got them, flaunt them. If you don't got them, buy them. Caution, this will cause other women to hate you. Do not despair. Once you and your terrific rack are running things, you can fire the jealous bitches. Politically correct flirting. There is no such things. That being said, if by subtle words or actions you can make a man feel sexually viable, he will act like a fool and you can steal his job. If you think that's cruel, you're not ready to break through the glass ceiling and should instead consider marrying a fat guy with hedge fund money and a history of confusing his erection pills with his heart medication. The views and opinions of Mr. Misogyny are not endorsed, held or shared by Chuck Lorre Productions, Chuck Lorre, anyone who works for Chuck Lorre or any of his friends, neighbors and relatives, not even a simple YouTuber who is just a messenger. Censored. Tonight's Vanity card is about censorship. It was censored. As always, you know where to look. On his website, you find this censored card. On a recent trip to Las Vegas, I watched a grim beer-bellied man row a gondola filled with tourists through the canals of Venice. This was his job. At some point he had to have filled out an application and undergone an interview process to determine if he had the necessary skills to be a pretend gondolier 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. As he glided past me, I found myself imagining him walking into his house at the end of a long day, tossing his keys into the cheap ceramic bowl by the front door and sadly calling out to his wife, "I'm home," to which she would cheerfully respond, "How was work today, sweetie?" But instead of saying fine, which was how he answered that question every other day, he paused and considered the day's events and all the events that had led him to this point in his life. Then he crossed to the hall closet, took down a shoebox from the hat shelf, removed a small caliber pistol that he'd bought for home protection, and immediately blew his brains out all over the badly framed photograph of him rowing Barry Manilow. Waking from my brief reverie, I found myself suddenly filled with compassion and respect for this stranger of the inland sea, compassion for his quiet desperation, and respect that he chose not to take his cheerful wife with him. I don't know about you, but Vegas always does this to me. We have once again arrived at a moment in history where the truth can be defined as that which you can make other people believe. The methodology for creating that belief is a repetition. Say something enough times and it becomes for millions of people the truth. I am endowed like a stallion. This is why control of the media equals control of the populace. I am endowed like a stallion, and also why a state-run television news channel is so very dangerous. I am endowed like a stallion. Now there are those who would argue this has already happened and that a certain cable news channel is actually a covert extension of our government. I am endowed like a stallion. The fact that the channel is run by a high-ranking party official, an anchor person from the channel became a White House spokesman and another top-ranking party official became an on-air news commentator is often used to make this argument. I am endowed like a stallion. Of course, this fact would be entirely inconsequential if the oft-repeated falsehoods they attempt to embed into that zeitgeist were simply amusing or at worst, inane. I am endowed like a stallion. But unfortunately that is not the case. I am endowed like a stallion. The heavy repetition of lies and smears for political gain are by no means inconsequential. I am endowed like a stallion, which is why each and every one of us must use whatever resources we have at our disposal to disseminate the actual truth. I am endowed like a pony. watching the market fall as precipitously as the hopes and dreams of NBC and ABC executives. I can't help but think that there are two bets I can make right now. One is on the simple inertia of a world economy created by hundreds of millions of people creating and servicing stuff that other people need and want. The other bet is on canned goods and guns. Since I've never actually fired a weapon and I'm not sure where my can opener is, I've decided to go with bet number 1. If I'm wrong and the market continues to descend like a drug-addled hooker with vertigo, it's reasonable to assume that any new world order created by the complete collapse of the free market system will have little use for a comedy writer. For that reason, I think it only prudent to hedge my bet. This weekend I plan on learning a few new survival skills, beginning with foraging for berries and hiding from people whose skill set includes shooting wildlife from helicopters. Censored. Once again, my efforts at comedy have been rebuked by the powers that be. As always, you know where to look. We look, Chuck, and here's what we found. Dear Sumner, just saw that you are single again. I'm sorry, dude. Love hurts. I too have recently returned to being the loneliest number, which is what got me to thinking that maybe you and me could hang out, you know, hit some clubs, chat up the ladies. I've got to believe you'd make a killer wingman. Oh, great idea for a dating or reality show. Prenup, Chuck, and the endless Sumner. I also saw that you're going through a little tough time in the old money department. Not to worry, the drinks are on me. You can tip the waitress. If you promise not to marry her. Just kidding, I kid the moguls. Ask Rupert. Your pal, Chuck. We exist to bear witness. We had to be. The infinite needs us to see it. Without the perceiver, the perceived does not exist. That gives us leverage. Don't look until you get what you want. Dear George Lucas, may I call you Mr. Lucas? On behalf of the writers of The Big Bang Theory, I would like to thank you for your astounding body of work, which has awakened the child within us and unleashed our dreams. That being said, we hope you don't take offense at our good-natured jest regarding your most recent animated efforts. Yes, they were cheap shots, but we can't help but hold you to a higher standard, a standard of your own making. In closing, we are all looking forward to Indiana Jones 5, The Curse of the Golden Catheter. Oops, sorry again. Very truly yours, the writers. P.S. to William Shatner, director of Star Trek V. Go ahead, sue us. As I sit by my window and watch the leaves on the trees turn from green to brown, and from brown to fire, I can't help but reflect on the 2 seasons of Southern California, Inferno and Flood. Soon the stinging smoke, raging wildfires and inevitable pyromaniacs will give way to months and months of biblical rain. And with that rain will come the memories. A home perched on a hilltop becoming garbage nestled in a valley, an idiot falling into the LA River and trying unsuccessfully to crawl up its cement banks, another genius being lifted off the roof of his car by a helicopter in Encino, the cliffs above Pacific Coast Highway collapsing yet again and causing Malibu residents so much inconvenience. Bob Meyer reassuring me that writing the second act of a Roseanne episode at 2 in the morning is more in my self-interest than trying to drive home and move my stuff to the second floor, but more likely becoming one of the knuckleheads standing on the roof of his car praying for a chopper. But I, as is my nature, what are ya gonna do? I am what I am. Digress. Eventually the rains will stop, the underbrush will grow, the drought will come, the drought will linger, maybe for years until the mountains and hillsides once again explode with Live at 5, Film at 11 Hellfire and thus continue the cycle of seasons of Southern California. If you don't count earthquakes and riots, and strikes, and award season. No insurance policy protects against the damage done by award season. Oops, I digressed again. I believe that inherent within the God-given right to the pursuit of happiness is the equally God-given right to the pursuit of unhappiness. That is why I support gay marriage. Recently, the magazine Entertainment Weekly had an article entitled The 25 Smartest People in Television. Yours truly was ranked at number 20. If the article is to be taken seriously, and God knows why wouldn't any sensible person take it seriously, that means there are currently 19 people in the TV biz who are smarter than me. Now I'm just thinking out loud here, but if something were to happen to those 19 people, if say, they were to one by one have horrible accidents or mysteriously disappear, then that would make me, ipso facto, the number 1 smartest person in television. Then I'd just have to keep an eye on number 21, Christina Wayne, Senior VP of Original Programming at AMC. Looks like the kind of woman who would stop at nothing to move up a spot. It's that time of the year when movie studios seeking Oscar nominations for their films start asking for my consideration. Every trade ad and mailing begins with the words, "For your consideration." It's kind of a Hollywood tradition. Anyway, this is what I've considered so far. Milk. A well-meaning gay guy is shot to death by a homophobe. Doubt. A really mean one accuses a really terrific priest of being a pedophile. Revolutionary Road. A married couple fight a lot, cheat on each other. Then the wife bleeds to death following a botched abortion. Slumdog Millionaire. Incredibly poor kids subjected to unthinkable evil, but with a happy ending. Defiance. Starving Jews fight Nazis in the woods. The Wrestler. A broken-down over-the-hill wrestler on steroids has a tough life. Changeling. A woman's son is abducted and the police put her in an insane asylum. Gran Torino. A dying widower commits suicide to help his neighbor. Benjamin Button. A guy grows old in reverse and then dies. Rachel getting married. A drug addict kills her baby brother and then pizzas off her family during a wedding. And The Reader. Nazi atrocities. Underage sex and illiteracy prove to be a lethal combo. So, what am I considering? Well, for the moment or two I actually considered hanging myself. But then I thought, if I do that, the movies win. There's a funny moment in tonight's episode where Sheldon gets stuck on a rock climbing wall and remarks, "What part of an inverse tangent approaching an asymptote don't you understand?" I thought it'd be helpful to take a moment and examine that joke. A linear asymptote is essentially a straight line to which a graph curve moves closer and closer but does not reach. In other words, given a function y equals x with asymptota, a represents a number that, no matter how big, or given the function, small, you make x, y will never make it to a. The particular example Sheldon quotes is the inverse tangent function or arctangent, which has two asymptotes. If you graph it, it sort of looks like a horizontal S. No matter how big you make x, that is how far you move to the right, the function is never going to hit that top line, pi over 2. And no matter how small x gets, moving to the left, y is never going to be smaller than negative pi over 2. The more you know, the funnier it gets. Live to see a highly educated, deeply thoughtful, articulate, cool, biracial president who is not overly crippled by childhood wounds, and capable in no particular order of freeing the nation of its oil dependence, restoring its international standing, creating universal health care, resurrecting the economy, ending 2 wars, rebuilding the public education system, finally bringing about an end to the mindlessness of racism, encouraging science and technology, firmly addressing environmental issues and global warming, and uniting the nation and the world in a giant cultural tipping point leap forward. Meet super-intelligent aliens who disarm the entire planet, cure every disease and take us all for rides across the galaxy. Play a round of par golf, trade solos with Eric Clapton, win an Emmy, get married, stay married. 1 down, 5 to go. A wise man once told me that we are all God in drag. I like that. Sometimes when I'm in a public place or sitting at a stoplight, I'll watch people walking by and I'll silently say to myself, he's God, she's God, he's God, she's God. Before long I always find myself feeling a warm sense of affinity for these strangers. The experience is even more powerful when I do this while observing a person who is clearly suffering. On occasion I'll test my little spiritual practice by turning on Fox News. Within minutes I become an atheist. After writing and producing TV for 20 years, I have developed a survival mechanism I like to call showbiz peripheral vision. What this means is that I can set my attention on the work at hand and still be able to see what's going on around me. The huddled confabs, the whispered asides, the sideways glances, the roll of the eyes, the smirks of disdain, the sulking pouts, the exhalations of disgust, the looks of admiration, few and far between, and the endless variations of body language that reveal impatience, rejection, jealousy and simple disbelief that I'm in charge and you're not. I see it all and I don't comment, I just make note of it. Occasionally I will respond in a roundabout fashion that might make you think I'm clairvoyant. I am not, I am simply watching. Just thought you might like to know. Carry on. Trying to get a break as a songwriter, I find out where Harry Nilsson lives and bring him a box of reel-to-reel tapes of my original songs. He threatens to kill me if I ever come to his house again. Not funny then, funny now. While working at Marvel Animation, I'm told I don't have what it takes to write for the Muppet Babies. Sadly, it's true. Not funny then, funny now. Write French Kissing in the USA, which is covered by Debbie Harry and released as the first single for her debut solo album. It effectively ends her solo career. Not funny then, funny now. Co-write theme song for new animated series called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The show is a massive international success. The music publisher tells my partner and I that we will not be paid music royalties for the millions of video games and video cassettes being sold. The reason we are given is that they'd rather not pay us. Not funny then, still not funny. I decide getting on staff at Roseanne would be a great opportunity for me, even though every writer who had ever worked on the show had been fired. 4 weeks into the job I deliver my first script and I'm almost fired. Not funny then, funny now. I create Grace Under Fire, realize what I'm in for and try to quit after pilot is picked up to series. I try to quit again during Christmas. A few weeks later the Northridge earthquake hits. During a large aftershock I drop to my knees and pray for the soundstage to collapse and kill me. Not funny then, funny now. I think developing a new series starring Sybil Shepherd is a swell idea. The show is an instant hit. Sybil wants me to fire Lee Aronson because he's a misogynist. She's not wrong, but I jokingly tell her, "Why do you care? You're not a woman." She fires us both. I get the call not to come back to work on Yom Kippur from a Cossie Werner exec named Dirk van der Bun. Not funny then, still not funny. The quantum physics joke Penny tells the guys in tonight's episode was told to us by Nobel Award-winning physicist Dr. George Smoot. Penny tells it in about 20 seconds. Dr. Smoot's version probably took about 3 minutes, although it felt a lot longer. No one had the heart to tell him to get to the punchline, proving my hypothesis that in addition to time slowing down as you accelerate, it also grinds to a halt when you are being courteous to a genius. Thanks for the joke, Doc. I believe that Newton's first law of motion is the reason we will emerge from our current economic woes. That law states that an object at rest tends to stay at rest and an object in motion tends to stay in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. How does that relate to the financial storm we are now cowering under? Allow me to explain. There are slightly less than 7 billion people on this planet. Assuming that roughly half that number are either too young, too old, too lazy, or too loaded to work, that still leaves almost 3.5 billion people getting up in the morning to chase the almighty dollar, the transcendent rupee, the zen yen, the dear old euro, the what's going on yuan, well, you get the idea. Now, call me crazy, and many have called me far worse, but I happen to think that 3.5 billion motivated people is one big damn object in motion, and the only thing acting against that object is the friction caused by a small bunch of greedy dumbass screw the pooch Ivy League pot stickers, the unbalanced force. I therefore assert that the unbalanced force, you know who you are, shame on you, will eventually be overwhelmed by the object in motion, 3.5 billion with pluck, aka pluckers, thus allowing the object in motion to continue its relentless journey forward, thriving and conniving until it is once again slowed down by other unbalanced forces, or a very large meteorite, or a plague, or fundamentalists with nukes, or atmosphere-eating nanobots, or a supervolcano, or Skynet, or silence. More and more it seems like people are yelling at me. This is especially noticeable on local and cable news, TV and radio ads, morning, afternoon and late night talk shows, religious channels, entertainment tabloid shows, and, NPR aside, radio. It's almost as if all the news anchors, reporters, product pitchmen, talk show hosts, politicians, sportscasters, DJs and preachers have forgotten how good modern microphones are. Regardless, the purpose of Vanity Cards is not just to point out the problem, it's also to propose the solution. And here's one, the Whisper Channel. A cable news channel where everyone, including advertisers, speaks in gentle, dulcet tones. Our marketing tagline will be one word, shish. Instead of grinning, shouting, overly coiffed failed actors, our news anchors will be regular folks with beautiful speaking voices who, just to be on the safe side, have been heavily sedated. Think of it, you've had a brutal day at work. Traffic on the way home was a righteous bitch. You crawl into your home which is worth far less than you paid for it and, because you want to stay informed, you turn on the Whisper Channel where a pleasant looking woman with real hair, real nose, real wrinkles, real breasts and teeth, the colour of teeth, soothingly tells you about the latest terrorist attack, stock market fiasco, school shooting and, just to keep it interesting, emergency recall of the anti-anxiety meds you've been taking because they might cause impotence, blindness and insanity. But because of the way she says it, you are hunky-dory. Alternate marketing tagline, the Whisper Channel, where human civilization sliding into the abyss is nothing to shout about. For months I've woken up to a mysterious, intermittent banging sound coming from somewhere in my home. I can't tell you how many mornings I groggily walked around in my pajamas searching for its cause. Frustrated by my inability to locate the source of the banging, I falsely accused my ancient refrigerator and began seeking a replacement. But then I caught a break. Rising early one morning for reasons urinary, I stumbled across the real source of the strange noise: a small, yellow-breasted bird living in a tree next to the kitchen window. Periodically, he would fly to the window, furiously peck at it with his beak, then quickly retreat to a nearby branch. At first I assumed that the morning light caused him to see his reflection and, being of limited intelligence, or filled with self-loathing, attack it. But once again, my initial instinct proved to be wrong. After a long conversation with the bird, learned that he was banging on the window because he had it in for my refrigerator. I have since apologized to the fridge, but it has been, not surprisingly, cool towards sorry. That really wasn't worth the journey. The following is an excerpt from my keynote speech at the 2009 Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America Nebula Awards. When I was 12 years old, my teenage sister had a boyfriend whom my parents lovingly named Cross-Eyed Larry. In my official capacity as the obnoxious little brother, I took it upon myself to annoy and harass Larry at every opportunity. In fact, I specifically learned to cross my eyes so I could welcome him to our home with the appropriately juvenile comedic flair. My mother constantly warned me that if I didn't stop doing that, my eyes would stay crossed. In hindsight, it appears as if she was lying or, at best, misinformed. Anyway, my speech tonight is a long overdue attempt to make amends for my childish pestering and cruelty towards this polite young man whose only discernible character flaw was a poorly aimed libido. No way he was getting over on my sister. But even more than an amends, I needed to find some way to thank him. And here's why. Way back in 1964, Larry did something that would change my life forever. In order to get rid of me so he could stick his tongue down my sister's throat, Larry gave me a dog-eared copy of Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles. His plan worked brilliantly. The book not only turned my prepubescent, hardy boy's world upside down, it would begin my lifelong love affair with science fiction. Unfortunately, Cross-Eyed Larry was not so lucky. Ultimately rejected by my sister, he descended into a life of drugs and crime that ended tragically when he was murdered in Attica State Prison because another inmate thought he was looking at him funny.